Good morning, good afternoon, good day, and good evening. We are back at it again today. It is another beautiful, wonderful day. And if I haven't told you before, I know I haven't because I'm just starting off today. I love you, and I'm glad that you're here with us. And if you like what we're doing here today, if you like the messages that we're giving out, if you like the fact that we're a little different, a little quirky, but I try to be less preachy, but that's okay. If you do feel that way about it as well, let me know. You can hop on in on the comments. We can talk about it there, or you can even come on up and we can talk about it here in a few minutes. Give me a minute. I'm going to drop a link down for everybody to come on in and to get involved, right? If you want to get involved, you can by all means. We want to be very, very, very hands on because these are community issues, which means that they're going to be community solutions. That being said, if you do enjoy it, give us a like, give us a subscribe, ring the bell, share it with your friends, tell everybody all about it. Hook a brother up if you don't mind. With that being said, let's get right into it. I don't want to like wasting everybody's time. We do this every day at 8 o'clock. So if you like it, we're going to sit there and continue talking about issues that are affecting us as a community, affecting us as Black people. Excuse me, is affecting us in general. And I want to make sure that as we go through this, as we get into it, as we continue to reflect on these things and continue to look at these things or what they are and how they're affecting us as far as policies, as far as uh, all the general hiring practices, all the laws, all of the the different nuances that impact us as Black people today in this society. I hope that you guys will definitely come along. I hope that you'll share it. I hope that we can get a community uh, involvement. I don't want to say grassroots. I guess that's kind of overused at this point where we talk grassroots. Give me a 1 minute. I apologize. This cable is bothering me, but that is okay. Now we are back at it. And we are at the end of the month. And I am loving it because that means it's the last day for patronage, right? Everybody who gets to patronizing you throughout the entire month. Oh, it's Black History Month. And they come in and they want to patronize you as a Black individual because it's Black history. It kind of, for me, I'll be honest with you, I hate that thought process. Not because it's a time where we can recognize that Black people have contributed to the society, contributed to this country. I just hate the patronization of it as if Black history is not American history, as if Black history is not world history, as if Black history is not just history, right? That the things that are gone on should not be hidden under the table, or we shouldn't be in a situation where we look at it and we don't acknowledge the contribution that Black people have given to this nation, to this country, to this world in general, and specifically what those things are. And a lot of history just depends on the perspective that you're looking at it from. If you're looking at George Washington, who many people here in this country consider a founding father, who many people here in this country considers a patriot beyond reproach, flip the perspective or the lens that you look at him with, and say that you're from England, another group of white people, and all of a sudden George Washington is a terrorist. George Washington is the number one enemy commander against their country. George Washington is a terror and someone that should not be held up as a role model or a figure. He's somebody who broke away from their country. He's somebody who led an uprising that was successful. He's somebody that they would love to be able to just sweep under the table and not talk about. But he still existed. And somewhere between those two viewpoints is the truth about that individual and being able to talk about that individual in a very real terms, right? He was someone who did those things. He was also someone who manufactured hemp or marijuana. He was someone who owned slaves and was a slave owner. And being able to talk about all of these different aspects of George Washington and George Washington's contribution to history is something that I apologize. There we go. It's something that we definitely want to make sure that we can utilize in our discussions, in our topics, and when we talk about history. Okay. So we don't want to get to the point where we're not talking about the actual factuals, the things that actually happen just because they make us feel uncomfortable, right? We want to make sure that once we are talking about history, and if we are talking about a situation that happened in history, that we talk about it in totality, that it is all history. It is all something that we need to take into account. All of it specifically deals with aspects that we may like or may not like, that make us feel good or make us feel bad. And no matter how it makes us feel, the reality is these things happened. These are actual historical accounts. And these accounts matter because they shape and frame many of the things that we deal with today. So pretending as if they didn't exist or wanting to cut them out and not talk about them because they make us feel uncomfortable, things that we might look at and it's like, well, I didn't like how that happened. And that was something that was very much so in the realm of something that I didn't like, right? It's not something that we really should gravitate towards. It's not something that we should accept. And it's not something, if you actually care about the quality of life for everybody, it's not something that we should embrace. However, the reality is that many times we don't care about the quality of life for everyone, right? And that kind of takes us right into what it is I really want to talk about. The fact that today, in this day and age, essentially we're still slaves, right? And I could always talk about from a constitutional standpoint that we're still slaves because from a constitutional standpoint, while slavery as a general rule has been abolished, there has been an exception that has been carved out that allows for and gives credence or permission to still utilize slavery today. And we talked about it ad nauseum in the previous episode when we talked about the 13th Amendment. And we can go as a, and we can definitely go in there and we can talk about from a legal standpoint how that definitely is something that we should look at and that should be appealed or changed in some way so that it's not just a general rule that we didn't change it from okay, slavery is not allowed except if you're a criminal, and if you're a criminal then yeah, slavery and indentured servitude still exists. They could still have convict labor based off of it, and while we can't call you a nigger anymore, we can call you a criminal. And that is something that might make a lot of people feel uncomfortable, but it's the truth. And if you look at the 13th Amendment, as we did the previous episode, you can see that that truth is actually documented. And it might make people feel uncomfortable. It might make people feel some type of way, but it's the reality. And the truth sometimes doesn't really care about your feelings. And while you would like it to be this way, or you would like it to be that way, and you expect it to be one way as opposed to another, those concepts are not always congruent with one another, always on the same page. So one of the things I really want to outline today is if we're looking at it from an honest standpoint, if we're looking at it from a standpoint where this is how things are working or not working, and we're looking at it from a historical perspective, we need to recognize that from the beginning of this country, from the time that the country was started, the time this country was founded, if you're looking at it from a historical standpoint, not just a Black historical standpoint, not just a U.S. historical standpoint, from a world historical standpoint, just a historical standpoint in general, this country was founded on a system of oppression and exploitation. Think about that for a moment. The system the country was founded on is oppression and exploitation. And I can add in there, and I shouldn't even say add in there. What also goes along with that is that episode that we had previously is hypocrisy. So when you look at it and you really consider it, exploitation, oppression, hypocrisy are all part and parcel to what it means to be an American today. So if you look, I say, if you back up and you see that the country was founded by taking the land away from the native inhabitants, by then giving them a separate set of rules or some kind of rules that we say, hey, you guys are kind of separate but equal, but not really. And whenever there is a conflict between the laws, that we are going to go with the American set of laws and we're going to violate whatever your native laws are. If we look at the system and we say that all of the economics of this country were founded on slavery and oppression, right? And recognizing that that is something that is integral to understanding the country in general, right? Everybody who made any kind of money in this country, everybody who was able to, pull themselves up by their proverbial bootstraps and make a new life for themselves here, as opposed to over in the UK or some other country where they might have come from. All of those things, all of those aspects are underpinned by slavery and by indentured servitude in this country. Think about that for a minute. Every single thing that we look at, if you look at any significant industry in this country that was formed from the beginning of this country and then subsequent, they were based on the same set of understanding and rules and value system as those initial rules of not just cheap labor or free labor. It was essentially slave labor. How do you pay your employees just enough, or how do you provide for them just enough, the bare minimum, the bare necessities, and in turn, extract maximum output or profit out of these individuals? Right. That has been the foundation or how this system has been founded from the beginning. Minimal input, minimum care, maximum output from everyone. And as we talked about initially, it was founded on what? On taking the land away from the from the indigenous individuals here. Think about that. The country, the foundation is based off of the land that we have here. This, I say, without the land, there is no United States of America. And that land is predicated and developed and built on the backs of slaves who helped to make the country and on taking it from the natives that were already here on this continent. So then you look at that, you understand that. You say, okay, well, this is the foundation, this is the formation, this is the starting point in our understanding of this country. This is the starting point in what it is that we on our understanding of how things are functioning here. Because if once you understand, the origins and how everything functions, then you're able to actually understand how to get ahead, right? How it is that in order for you to get ahead, you need to be okay with exploiting others and oppressing others. That is how you get ahead. If you understand that, and you understand the fact that you want to be able to pay your employees, the people that are working for you, the minimum amount, and you want to make sure that you can extract from them the maximum amount. You don't want to pay them enough that they can tell you to go screw yourself at some later date, right? You don't want to pay them enough where they look at you and you start talking about things that are uh, irrational, or you start talking, or you start trying to extract too much, and they're thinking about their needs is what you want them to be thinking about, as opposed to that's just not morally right, or that's not right. You don't want them to question. You don't want them to be able to have any kind of input. What you want is to extract the maximum amount a maximum amount out of them. And that's what brings me to my first point that I want to talk about how we are still slaves in this society today. And in many ways, we're slaves to money, right? So once you go through the educational system, and when I say the educational system, I always allude to it as being indoctrination. But once you go through that system, there is compulsory education in this country up until the 12th grade. That is the minimum amount that this country requires. You can drop out. The GED says that you at least have enough, or the level of knowledge rises to an individual has completed 12 years of institutional learning here in this country, right? And what do you learn while you're there? What is it that you're taught while you're there? Well, You would think that you would be taught, you would be given information about a variety of subjects, things that would help you to formulate and to be able to work in this life and to subsist and work and cooperate with others in order to do that. And to an extent, that's true. Right. Again, this is the good, the bad, and the ugly. So, because to an extent, that's true. Going to teach you math. They're going to teach you reading. Going to teach you how to write. We're going to teach you patriotism. You're going to get that wherever you go. Every school you go to in the morning, you will be taught this. You will be indoctrinated with patriotism and believing in this system, right? That whatever they tell you in this system, that is the right thing. That is what you really, really, really want to be involved in. That is what you really, really, really want to talk about. That's where your mindset really, really needs to be at. And I know that's a lot of really, really, reallys, but that's intentional. In any event, when you look at it from that perspective, you're going to be taught those things. And then when you come out, you want to get the best job possible. You want to work for somebody. You want to find a job at a Fortune 500 company, Fortune 100 company. You want to have a high paying position at some job. You want to be an employee. That's a very, very powerful thought in that process, because there's two strata once you really start to look at it in this country. And actually, I would probably break it into four, but there's two right now that we're going to focus in on, right? Because you traditionally had the true two strata. We talked about those people that you want to pay just the minimum amount and get which traditionally has been black people, right? So that would be one of your strata, but you want to make sure that you have that the black people are the employees. You don't want them to be employers. You don't want them to be entrepreneurs. Why? We have made a list of rules, or laws rather, that separates or defines two different strata or two different layers of people in the United States. What do I mean by that? Primarily, you're either an employee or you're an employer. If you're an employee, it becomes relatively simple for you. You're going to get a paycheck. You want to work X amount of hours or X amount of days. You're either salaried or whatever you can negotiate with your employer. And there's a certain set of tax laws that apply to you. And whether it's the tax laws on the federal level or being able to qualify for the tax laws because the state allows you to be a corporation or an LLC, whether it's a corporation as an S corp or a C corp, and if you meet the S corp requirements, or a C corp or something along those lines, now that you qualify to become a corporation or an LLC or some kind of company, there is a set of rules monetarily that apply to you that doesn't apply to your employee. There are deductions that you can take. There are games that you can play financially that you can't play if you're an employee. There are tax breaks and benefits available to you that are not available to you if you're an employee. So when you go through the educational process, when you go through and you become educated, or I like to say indoctrinated in the system, you are educated to work for someone else and to be in that lower strata with that other set of rules that doesn't benefit you as greatly as it benefits those in the upper strata, those that are creating the jobs. Right? You don't want to. Why would you want to create a job yourself? Why would you want to go through the hardship yourself? Why would you want to create a company? Why would you want to do any of those things? Wouldn't it be easier? Wouldn't it be better? Isn't that better? Isn't that better? Right? When they sit there, they look at it and they say, "You want to be an employee? Isn't that better?" I know that's out of context. It deals with relationships, but hey, it also applies here. Isn't that better? It's how they would look at that, right? You don't want to be an employer. There's a lot of risk involved. You're taught to be risk adverse, right? Be a slave. You don't want to take the risk. Have someone tell you what to do. Have someone stand over you with a whip. Okay, not a whip, a timesheet, or someone who can hold that job over your head. And because you are so beholden to making sure that you don't run afoul of the master, or I should say your employer, you do the things that they want you to do, the way that they want you to do it, even when those things are in direct conflict with morals, with your family, with keeping things together, right? At that point, you are still there in that job because that's what you need to do. There's no loyalty to you, right? They figured out a way on how they can extract maximum profit out of you, and put in minimum effort. And that's something to really think about. That is a foundational idea within this country. So when you consider how this thing started, when you consider everything that happened, you understand that that is an idea that's definitely there. And trust me, give me a few minutes here. I'm almost wrapping up. I'm gonna drop the link, and I want you guys to jump in here and tell me exactly where you might think I'm wrong at. Tell me exactly what it is that I might be hitting on that's right, what I'm hitting on that's wrong. So I'm gonna drop the link here in a few minutes. But to bear with me, bear with me. I'm almost there. But bear with me. So when you're looking at the educational aspects of it, and you look at how this system works with the educational aspects, they underpin it by two different sets of rules. And we can define what those rules are both on the state laws and the federal laws that succeed those, that are positioned constitutionally. And one of those laws, when you really look at it, is understanding that the country is founded, as we talked about, on and predicated on being able to take away the land, because the land is where you make your money, right? Someone comes along, they find resources on land, and they're able to take advantage of the resources there, or to be able to utilize the resources there. However you want to look at that, that land has resources available on it that certain individuals are able to actually utilize and others are not. How do we determine whether or not an individual is able to utilize the resources of that land that they're at? And how do we determine who has the right to do so? Well, sometimes we start thinking about, well, it's private property. Whoever owns that property, that's one way that you can look at it. You can really look at it from that perspective, that land that you own. And I'm going into this because I'm looking at it from a certain perspective, or from a few different perspectives, but there is an underlying perspective in which I'm looking at this from. And you know what? Let me not bury the lead. Let me talk about it from this perspective, and let me share something with you. And I want you to take a look at something, because I shouldn't even say take a look at it. I'm just going to show it to you briefly. It's not as important. I shouldn't say it's not as important. It's extremely important, but it's something that most people, they're not familiar with. And let me make this bigger, because that is a small little document, and I don't want small little documents that people can't read sitting here on your screen, or something that's too big that means that you need some glass, that maybe your glasses. All right, so this here is one of the most egregious decisions that ever came out of the Supreme Court. It deals with land, it deals with property, and there's a difference between real property and personal property. And you might be asking, well, what do you mean there's a difference between real property and personal property? Well, when you're looking at it, there's real property, which is land, real estate type stuff, and personal property that you think of as like the trinkets that's in your pocket. And there's a difference between the two. And a lot of times when we think of ownership, we think of it the same way that we think of ownership for personal property in regards to real property. And one of the things that this law dealt with here in Connecticut, this Kilo versus the City of New London, uh, is that there used to be this thing for eminent domain and a taking, right? And you always have to realize that no matter how you might define or how you might understand something when you read it, doesn't matter. What matters is how the Supreme Court interprets that same law. And let me go back. When you read something, specifically when you read a law, when you read a statute, when you read that information, you might think that it means one thing, and you might think that that is plain and obvious what it actually means. However, what you think it means and what it actually means legally that everybody else is going to have to agree with is the interpretation of that law by the court. Specifically, in this case, if it runs all the way up to the Supreme Court of the United States, that's the final stop. That is where they come back and they say, no, this is what they mean by this in this law. So if there's language that might be ambiguous, or people are arguing about what that certain term means, and you might have two people saying, well, obviously it means this, and the other person says, no, obviously it means that. It comes down to, what does the Supreme Court say that it obviously means, right? That's the ultimate. This is what it means. And so one of the things here in this case, that this Kylo versus the city of New London in Connecticut, it dealt with this concept of eminent domain and a taking by the city or the state or whatever the entity is that's taking this property. And one of the things that traditionally the Fifth Amendment's taking clause that it talked about, that everybody always pretty much agrees on, that there has to be just compensation. Just compensation is one thing, but the reasoning behind the taking has traditionally been, if it has a, when they look at it, why is the city able to take it? And they always talk about, there's several things, but they talk about for a public use. So what does a public use actually mean? Well, after this verdict by, or opinion by, the Supreme Court, one of the things that came out of it is essentially it means whatever the city says it means, whatever the state says it means, whatever the municipality says it means. If they want to take your property and give it to a land developer, which is what happened here, they can do that. They can take your property and say that taking your property and giving it to somebody else to develop it however they want to, or in accordance with the city says is how they should, that is adequate justification for them to take it. They'll compensate you with however much the going price is for your land. So it doesn't matter how much money that you put into it. It matters on what the going price is for land in that area. And I shouldn't say for land, but yes, for the property that you're going to be on, what is the going price for the property in that area? Whatever that is what you're going to end up being paid, and they're going to take your property. And it's a really interesting concept, because what it actually lays bare for everyone at that point is the fact that now you understand that the property, or real property, doesn't really belong to you, doesn't belong to another citizen, doesn't belong to another corporation or company. It belongs to the government. You don't pay your taxes on it, they take your land away because it's their land anyway. You're only leasing it from them for however long they say that you live, or however long you're able to continue paying them. Your taxes is what you're going to continue paying, even if if you pay off the other individual or the people that purports to have had ownership of that land. And they can always take that land away from you, eminent domain, or as a Fifth Amendment under the Fifth Amendment taking, and give you just compensation for whatever that reason is, and they can give it to somebody else. So when you're looking at it from that perspective, it's understanding that there's two strata, right? You have the employers, the employees. Black people are normally you go through schools, they want to make sure that the education that you get is geared towards making you an employee or subservient class. The land that you're going to be on, that you can build up your wealth, that you can make a Black Wall Street or something along those lines on, that land belongs to the government, doesn't belong to you. And at any time, when you start keeping pace, they're going to change up that tempo. They can change it however they want to. And legally, it's interpreted as that is okay for them to do. And who's them? The government, right? Legally, it's okay for the government to do that. As a matter of fact, it would be okay for a private party to do that as well, because in this case with the taking, it was a private a corporation that wanted the property, the land developer. They wanted the property. They lobbied to whoever their representatives were within that city of New London, and they had the people there in New London give them the property legally, right? That was the whole crux of that is between big government and big business working hand in hand. You have a situation where they were able to take the property from those individuals, even though you would think that that eminent domain, that public use exception, it would actually have to be something that the public's going to use, like they're going to make it into a park or they're going to make it into a highway or something along those lines. But it says, hey, if you're going to make it into a development that we think will make our city better or whatever, however our justification is, and so long as we compensate you justly, financially, then you're okay, right? And that's where you really start to see the underpinnings of how this is working. So you think that you have a understanding of how it's working with the education that you received, and in order for I'm not going to bring up those statistics right now, but one of the things that definitely comes up a lot, in order for you to definitely understand how it is that we are educated and informed, the way we're taught to be or taught to be informed and where we're taught to go to get this information and the information that we're provided normally is insufficient. And if you want to get a higher level of education, then you're going to have to pay through the nose for it. You're going to have to go further in debt because we have a debt based economy. Our economy is based on debt. We create finance, we create money based on debt. And I'm contemplating today, do I really want to show you what that looks like? I might. I might. I might come back. I might show you what that looks like. Um, so when you're looking at it, so you have three different things that are helping to keep you as a slave in this country. Right? You might think that you have freedom. You might think that you have it, but when you really begin to look at it, a lot of the things that you're taught, a lot of the underpinnings that you have, they don't really hold true. They don't really work that way, or the way that you think that they should work. You own property. It's not really the way that you think. You're thinking ownership in terms of personal property, not ownership in terms of real property. You go, well, what's the difference? Or we talked about a second ago, the distinction's very slight. It sounds the same, real property, personal property, but it's actually two different things. And ownership in both terms are going to be different, right? So you might say it means two entirely different things. Depends on whether or not you're talking about personal property or whether or not you're talking about real property. So we have two sets of rules that we deal with. We have, and it's codified for employers versus employees, how you can save your money or how you can keep your most of your money, even though you might be in a higher tax bracket. There are ways that you can protect your money and not have to pay that 40% tax rate that they say that most rich people have to pay. And that's because, again, that's because it's codified within the tax laws. So you want to make sure that as you're going through it, that you understand those laws. And I guess let me read one of these chats as I'm going. Slavery in perpetuity, yeah, America. Yes, it is. It's Taylor there, and I thought, what? Okay, yeah. So in perpetuity, this is where we're at with this on how it is that we're taught, what it is that we're taught about, and how these things are keeping us as slaves in this country. They're keeping us in a way, or they're keeping us here that it is a rule book. It is America 101, Deani. That is definitely there. If you're thinking that that's what it is, that is definitely what it is. That is accurate. And it's understanding what those rules are. It's understanding that the things that you might have been taught, how you've been taught, and the direction that you've been taught to go in is the wrong direction. Getting to the point where you can earn X amount of dollars at this job is not necessarily the way that you want to go. There's a reason why you have things like there's owners and there's players in the NFL. You have billionaires and millionaires. And from those of us who are thousandaires, you look at that and that's like, oh, that's a whole nother level, but it's still the exact same game. They're playing the exact same game. How to extract maximum effort by providing minimum profits. All right. So you want to say the foundation, the formation of this country is based as we talked about initially at the beginning here, on taking away the land and building it on slavery or a system of slavery and indentured servitude, wherein you get maximum effort with minimum profit or minimum sharing of the resources. And that's all our money is essentially, right? They teach you to value the money. And a lot of the system is based off of trust. We're in a trust based economy. And again, give me a minute. I'm going to sit there. I'll drop this link in a moment here. I'm getting there. I'm almost done. But we live in a trust based economy. Some people say it's the full faith and credit of the currency of the United States, that's what backs our currency. Full faith and credit of as the United States. And then some people say, hey, you want it to be backed by gold, or you want to, all of that is based on trust. You trust that if I get a bar of gold, I can get access to that level of resources that we've agreed on that the gold represents, or that the silver represents, or whatever the commodity is. In our case, this is dollars, right? And the dollar essentially is the exact same thing. It is a system wherein you have a piece of paper, because it's easier to carry around than it is carrying gold or silver or any other metals. And the paper has a certain set of dimensions made out of a certain material, and they're all made out of the same type of material in our country with the same type of ink. The difference is the patterns. And one pattern says it's worth your access to 20 pieces or 20 of whatever that currency is. And another piece of paper would say 100. And the same type of paper. So as far as value of the paper is valued the same. But your access is based off of what the note says or what the currency says in that situation. Remember what Jay-Z said? Let me see what you have here, Dion. It says, you'll always be in jail. Insert N word here, just minus the bars. I think that captures it. Yeah, I say it pretty much does. It captures exactly what it is they want to make sure that we do, as far as we'll always be subservient as Black people here in this country. And the education that you're going to get is going to be an education that's geared towards keeping you subservient. They're getting to the point now where they want to make it so that you can opt out of, or when Davos was there, that you want to be able to opt out of the public school education and put them into private schools where they can get a different level of education, where they can actually get educated on how the system works. That they're not taught about going in and becoming indebted the same way that we do, understanding how the debt-based economy works, understanding how the economy in general works, understanding the fact that the money just represents your level of access to resources. That's all that is. We chase money because we want access to resources. We want to be able to get in there. We want to have a level of access to resources to take care of our needs, not just take care of our needs, but then some of our wants as well. And they deny you that ability, as we talked about, because the goal is to give you just enough that you're happy with what you're getting, but not enough that it makes it so that you're self-sufficient. Let's see what we have here. It says, and metals are heavy, bro. The metal that makes up money, not some. Yeah, as I say, you're looking at it, and I say that's true. I say, and now there's some countries or some communities or some cultures, they used to do it with stones. They would have big old stones that what they used for their currency for a while, and it was just, I own that stone, and that was what that was. And then they based what your access was based off of how big that stone was, right? You didn't have to carry it with you. You just said that one over there, the one that's 2 miles down, that's my stone. And that was the form of currency. I can transfer that stone to you. Do you want that stone? Or ownership of that stone? And that's also a very interesting concept, right? Because normally it's like, is it that you just arrive to the place first and now you get the land and all the resources on there? Or in this case, all the land that they've surveyed and said this is all part of the United States, and we determine who gets access to the resources. You're an oil company, oil and gas company. You want access to these resources. There's a way on how you have to go about doing it. Here's who initially has it, and then we can sell you access to those resources. And the person, do they have what level of access do they have to that real estate? Is it just surface level? Do they have access to the mineral rights that's on that property? There's a level of the level of ownership or entitlement on that property as far as to access to those resources that people have. Let's take a look. What do we have for here? So people would use you can use just about anything. you can use just about anything as far as resources. So yes, people could use cattle. That's possible as well. I say, and it's interesting because sometimes people go like, well, if, and I heard some, I'm trying to remember who I first heard this argument from, where they talked about the fact that we had the money that we have, it needs to be based off of the gold standard, and that if everything went to hell in a handbasket, you want to have gold because that's what people would go back to. No, what people go back to is who has enough ammo to come take the resources that they want at that point, right? That's what they would go to. You don't need gold-plated bullets. Might look nice, but that's not necessarily what you want to trade for. You can come get it after you own the land, after you've taken the resources, after you're able to continue feeding your people, after you're able to sit there and continue to subsist and drink and everything else. Once you're able to secure that level of access to resources, then gold and all the other stuff that you might want, that becomes relevant. Let's see, remember the United States definition of discovered is a little skewed. Yeah, that's what we talked about earlier. That you have to understand this entire thing by the fact that the land that the United States here that we have, that is based on fundamentally taking it from the natives, and everything that was built is built based off of slavery and indentured servitude here in this country. So getting people, paying them the least, if nothing as possible, will provide for your necessary needs, so that you're required to continue working for someone else in order to get your needs met, as we call it serfdom way back in the day when it was over in the quote unquote old world. And today in the new world, it was just slavery. And then you had sharecropping and other things where you had peonage and convict labor, but it's all based on the same thing, and understanding the base level and how it builds from there is very important. What else do we have here? We have, remember the golden rule. Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I call it the might makes right. He who has the might, if you have the might, then it's right, or he who has the gold makes the rules. I definitely agree with that aspect of it. That being said, let me just open this up as well. If anybody's out there that wants to hop on, but it's really, really telling that the system that we have, the level of education that you get, that for a black person, you have to have, in order to make around what a white person makes, you need a college education. But a college education is going to set you back a decent, depending on what you want to do, hundreds of thousands of dollars. Right. So in order to get to a place where you're actually competitive, in order to actually gain any level of resource, in order to kind of offset the debt you're going to go into, the fields that you're not entering into something that you want to do, you're entering into something that you need to do in order to actually do that. And it's not that the I would argue that it's not that that these other fields, computer science and the like, are that much better than other fields, right? That you couldn't get into another field and contribute to society in a way that is actually beneficial based off of the field that you're in. How much it pays, how much is valued, is based on society as a whole, and not even society as a whole, because that makes it sound like we've set a threshold because we know how much actors and entertainers get paid. Is that a valuable skill that everybody needs to have or should have, right? Or we know how much computer scientists get paid. Is that a valuable skill? So where's the value add in these skills? Where's the value added to the people? I always like to point out that things that you look at, these things, they're valuable, but do they have value to you? Let's see. You only need to agree to be competitive in 3 fields. I agree. I definitely agree. I say for me, those 3, I'm not sure what the 3 are for you, but for me, they're medical. So for doctors and nurses and the like, legal, that's another one that's pay to play, and academia, right? Everything else, including engineering, you can hop into. And maybe because I'm jaded and biased, because being in the oil and gas industry at one point, I know that you can get into engineering and engineering type fields based off of on the job training, right? So you get a little OJT in there, you can definitely do that as well. And there's a lot of things, even working in a nuclear power plant. Let's say you went to the military and you worked on a nuclear power plant on board an aircraft carrier or a submarine or something along those lines, or and you know how a nuclear power plant works, and you come right back out, and now you're able to hop into a job where you're working in a nuclear power plant. So there's only three fields there where the college education is actually needed. There are other ways on how you can gain the level of knowledge and the level of experience necessary in order to do other fields that you might think the barrier to entry is that you must have college. That is, again, lies that you're told, or falsehoods that you're told based off of these things, that you're thinking, hey, this is the only way to get into these fields. There's other ways in, and a lot of times we hustle backwards. What you should do is identify what it is that you want, or what it is that you're trying to get. And don't let that be just the money aspect of it. Right? Earning money, I hate saying it this way, but earning money is not the most difficult thing to do. Right? Depends on what it is that you're willing to do for it. You can earn money. You can go to work for somebody. I mean, there are ways on which you can earn money, that you can definitely go about doing it. Not all of them are things that you probably want to do. I'm talking about legal work for money, not illegal work for money. But earning money is not something that is impossible or you're precluded from doing. But it's, what are you willing to do in order to earn the money? What values are you willing to subvert for yourselves in order to earn that money? And it's something that we constantly have to ask ourselves when it comes to that aspect of actually earning money. Give me 1 minute here. What do we have? This needs to be talked about more. Options and knowing what they are important. It is. I say, because when you get into it and you look at these options, when you look at what it is that we're able to do, then if you start at the end, what's the goal? What is it we're trying to do? And again, like I said, they teach you to hustle backwards. Just start here and just walk down this path, and you have no idea what the end path, if you even want to be at the end path or the end of that path. I remember, I say, sometimes people in the military would say, well, you need to be able to envision yourself being that next level up, or being the E7 or the E8. And if you can't, then maybe this is not the field for you. And that's a pretty good way to go about it. If you're troubleshooting something, a lot of times you'll start, what's the outcome I'm looking for? You understand how it works. And then all of a sudden you see, okay, well, I'm not getting this output. I'm not, has a work should I start at? Normally I'll tell you, if you don't know, then go to the halfway point. And then but if you do have an idea, oh, this is where it failed at. So I take that example to say, a lot of times in life, if you're looking at it and you want to get ahead in any meaningful way, or you're looking for trying to earn a living, the earning of the living is the secondary aspect of it. What is it that you actually want to do? You identify what you want to do, and then you identify that path to get there. Right? Let's use, you want to become an attorney. If you want to become an attorney, you say, okay, I want to become an attorney. So what is the pathway? Since we talked about legal being one that needs to go through the schools, what's the pathway that you would need to take? Well, in order to get to become an attorney, you need to pass the bar, you need to pass the MPRE, and you need to pass the character and fitness in that state and pay your bar dues. Well, they won't allow you to pay your bar dues if you haven't passed the bar. They won't allow you to admittance to the bar if you haven't passed the bar exam and the MPRE and the character and fitness. So the next thing you need to know, okay, what do I need to do in order to take the MPRE? What do I need to do in order to take the bar exam? Well, in order to take the bar exam, you're going to need to have a JD, a Juris Doctorate degree. How do you get a Juris Doctorate degree? You have to go through law school in order to get a Juris Doctorate degree. Okay. Well, how do I get into law school? Well, you need to have an undergraduate degree, and you need to pass the LSAT in most cases, Harvard being the exception, but getting acceptance into a law school in order to get a Juris Doctorate degree, you need to do that. And you need to not curve out while you're in law school. And that's getting a little too granular, but at that point, you have to say, okay, so now is there specific degrees that you need in order to get in law school? You're looking at that. As far as to take the LSAT, and what kind of testing that you can do as far as preparation testing for the LSAT. So now you need an undergraduate degree. So now you got to get into a university or college in order to get an undergraduate degree. And then you're looking at what the money and the output is along the way. So you've identified what the path is. You can identify how much the outpouring of resources that you're going to need in order to attain it. What are the paths to getting those things? And then once you've laid all that out, you now know what it is you need to do in order to get to that end goal of becoming a practicing attorney. What do we have here is this: if those three fields don't seem possible in the Black community, usually what's proposed, Biggie said it best, crack rock or a jump shot. Sad that's only 5 choices total. I would agree. I say it's for, and this is another one where we talk about what those rules are. Give me 1 minute. Let me see what the next one is. Oh yeah, the military too. That's 6. So yeah, I say, so when you're looking at it, there are definitely options that are available if depending on what it is you want to do. Can you make money as a truck driver? Yes. How do you become a truck driver? Right. So you go through that same process. I would like to travel. I would like to travel on the road, have my own trucking company. Okay, how would I go about doing that? Identify what that is, and then what the path is in order to get there. I would like to uh, become, as a lot of times they only pitch to us becoming an athlete or uh, becoming an entertainer, because those are people that make millions and millions of dollars, and you want to you want to be able to make millions and billions of dollars, and you want to be able to oppress other people. You want to be able to exploit others in order to do it. There are other avenues that you can go through where you don't necessarily need to go through that same route or that same path. And you can be in one of those two, as in you can get out of the employee area and into the employer area and be able to take advantage of those tax laws. And they're going to start putting in more to the tax code, because you're going to have to pay an accountant to sit down and go through your taxes to make sure that and your financials, to make sure that you get every single drop out of it, because they make it that complicated. That being said, it's extremely important as you recognize that yes, we're definitely still slaves in this system. Slaves to money, slaves in the sense of the 13th Amendment, slaves to what other people want us to do and are being told to do by those people who are rich and powerful. And they play all kind of games. And right now they're having a field day on exposing what some of those games are, from nonprofit organizations to uh, also looking at things uh, for other people. What is it? Such as paintings and artwork, on how that's a scam that they utilize in order to continue to hide or you know, give themselves layers of protection for their money. And instead of sharing that money the way they should, it's interesting that even once they're able to sit there and give to nonprofit organizations, it's kind of like when you think about banking and the debt-based economy that we have. And I said I was going to point out the debt-based economy. Let me share this with you. Let me do it this way. I was thinking, do I want to do it this way? And I was like, I don't know. Let's do it. I said I was going to do it. Let's do it. So let me share my screen here with you. All right, here we go. I think. There we go. That screen. All right. So if you're looking at my screen right now, you're looking at exactly what I'm looking at. It's just a clear whiteboard. So here you have a situation where individuals, you go to a bank, and we have our economy that's based on debt. We create money out of thin air. How do we create money out of thin air from a bank? So I'm not going to go into the difference between M0 money, M2 and M3 money. I'm just going to go that the nation, since we're on what they call a fiat currency, they determine how much money is out there, and you get X amount of dollars. And let's say, and it normally doesn't work this directly, but let's say that at your bank, you get $100, right? So you get $100, and that $100 comes in, and you decide, hey, I'm going to take this $100 and I'm going to deposit it in my bank. So this $100 gets deposited, and this is your money that you deposited in your bank. Now your bank says, hey, we're not required to keep all 100 of those dollars. We have a fractional reserve currency, which means that we only need to keep a portion of your money. We only, and in this example, it's going to vary, it's going to fluctuate. So it could, for the example, we're going to say have to keep 10% of your money, right? So the bank is only going to keep 10% of your money, right? Which means they're going to take $10 of your money. They're going to keep that $10 here. Then they're going to loan out $90 of your money, right? And they loan that $90 out to someone else. And let's say this other person has their own bank, right? And that $90 goes to this individual's bank. And their bank says, hey, we're not required to keep all of your money. We're only required to keep 10% of your money. And this individual or this bank now loans out the money from this individual to the next person, right? And so what you'll have is you'll have the $10 here, you have the $9 here. Let's kill my atrocious handwriting. Right? You have the $10 here. That just looks too bad. This is why I normally don't do this. Better. All right. So you have $10 here. You have $9 here that's been made. And the banks keep on loaning out subsequently to each person. And this money here on this level is money that is the actual money that's actually kept. That's the money that's actually kept. The remainder of it, when you start going down the line, all of a sudden, this money is stuff that the bank is just creating from this point going forward, right? And the bank is creating money on this level going forward. Everything else that they're keeping, the fractional reserve, they're keeping that for themselves. They're keeping it because that's what the law says, but yet and still, that's what it keeps on going they keep on creating this additional money. And the banks, every time that somebody comes in and gets a loan, they're creating money on a ledger, just creating it. It's money being created on a ledger, and it's being created based on debt. So long as we keep on acquiring debt, so long as you keep on borrowing, they're essentially, the way it's been explained to me from economists when I was actually asking these questions was that, hey, it's essentially, they call it borrowing from the future, right? We're in theory, they're reaching their hand out through a time portal in the future, and they're grabbing those resources from the future and saying that they're now available to us here in the past. And at some point, the amount's going to come due, but that's the game that they're playing right now. So this is something that once you understand how it works, how it functions, then you're looking at it from that perspective. Okay, this is stuff these are games that we're playing, and the games that we're playing are games that we're playing to make sure that this system that we have that's based off of the lower levels, the people who are employees, the Black people, and other people who are poor, stay at that low level. Have a separate set of rules that applies to them than it applies to those people that are at the higher level. That the people at the higher level are able to launder their money through artworks. They're able to launder their money through various charitable organizations. They're able to launder their money and to protect their money through these various organizations that are only available to the people at this strata. And then everyone else gets a separate set of rules. And that's where it becomes an issue, is that we don't really understand what the rule set is. We don't understand how it impacts everybody. We don't understand all of that. That being said, let me drop this link, and I'm going to give you about 10 minutes. I'm going to sit up here and talk for a few more minutes here, and then I'm going to jump off. But I want to make sure I give everybody an opportunity. If you guys disagree with me and feel that my summary was overly simplistic, I like to keep it simple. I do like to keep, because I look at things from the perspective of, when it comes to money is basically just access to resources. That's all money does. Money determines what your access is to the resources. That's it. Don't look at it as anything else besides determining your level of access to resources. And someone's going to give you a level of access to resources if you're an employee, or if you're an employer, you're going to have to borrow and get debt from a bank, because ultimately it's the banks, the government, big business that's going to sit there and determine your level and your access to resources on that level. And then from there, you're playing a different game, but you're playing a game where you're still debt based, and it's still based off of the government. And if and your goal, in many cases, especially like the examples many people talk about in in technology specifically is to get your company big enough that you have another company that will buy you out. Right. So you want to get big enough, you create something that's big enough that Google looks at it and goes, "Hey, we want to buy you YouTube. Hey, we want to buy you Nest. Hey, we want to buy these various companies." So you want to get your product, your service, whatever it is that you're offering to a level that a bigger company will gobble you up. That's the goal in this system, right? And understanding what those goals are and what those stage gates are helps you to appreciate the inequity that's there, how it is that you get into those levels, and then how it is that you stay at a level where you're not just subsisting and you have access to resources that others don't necessarily have. And that's pretty much all I have for you guys tonight. I'm hoping that you guys got something out of it. And again, if you like what we're doing here, you can support us by either helping buy us a coffee at the stuff that's down there on the banner. You can like, comment, subscribe, as they talk about on the whole YouTube thing. And I'm going to say, please share this. If you find the information valuable, we're going to chop up everything that we did here for February. So look for snippets and whatnot coming out here over the next few days. I'm gonna do it a little different than what everybody else does. They said that they like to do it the very next day. Maybe I should start. I'm probably gonna start doing that. Cut it up, put it out the very next day. But as of today, that's not what I'm doing. The goal here is to put it all out. I want to put out a bunch of snippets here over the next couple of days, just so we can have a bunch of content that's out there. Everybody does it a little differently. That's how I do. That's how I'm gonna do it today, or at the beginning of the month. And hopefully the patronizing stops tomorrow, that we recognize that 1 month is not just about Black history, that every day is Black history, because Black history is American history, Black history is world history, Black history is history. And it help as a and not wanting to talk about it because it hurts people's feelings, not wanting to talk about the inequities within the system or how the system is formulated, not wanting to acknowledge the various issues within the system, and saying that, hey, it's a good system so far, but there's a lot of things in here that could be better. There's a problem there, and that's something that really needs to be addressed. There is a lot of good things within the system, and I understand that people who are benefiting from the system don't want to change the system, because if you change the system and they're getting something out of it, then they're going to be upset, right? And now they're looking at it as, you're taking stuff from me, as opposed to, we are rectifying the fact that your ancestors took things from everyone else. Uh, Again, that's about it. I know I told you guys at the beginning, I love you guys. I hope that you're having a great day, or had a great day, that you killed the day for the day. You're getting ready for tomorrow, and you're looking out for tomorrow and what you're going to be doing tomorrow. And may you always, always, always have peace in your life. And with that, we're out.